It wasn't pretty, but it counts just the same. We'll discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly in the New York Islanders' 5-4 win over the Chicago Blackhawks. Plus, more good news on the injury front. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Friday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You could start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, I'll admit it. It was ugly. Most of this game was not good enough for the New York Islanders in the big picture sense. But if we take it from a small picture sense, at the end of the day, they don't ask how, they ask how many. And this win counts as 2 points, just the same as if the Islanders had just beaten the Blackhawks 7-0 and just shut them down and exploded for the 7 goals. In the standings, it counts. And there were some good things to take away from this game. You certainly had to be pleased with the play of J.G. Pageau and of Simon Holmstrom. And even Noah Dobson went out there and had a multi-point game for the Islanders. You had to be happy with the way the Islanders bounced back after falling behind 1-0. And that after giving up a power play goal in the first period, they didn't give up another one, and they scored the next 5 goals in the game. That being said, this is the Chicago Blackhawks. You're playing a team that is at or near the bottom of the NHL standings, depending on which day you're asking me that question. This is a young team in a full rebuild mode that has just started to raise expectations from, we're going to get a high lottery pick to let's hang around in the playoff race a little bit longer. Let's be in the conversation until the end of March. That's more or less their goal for this year. These are the games you need to come out and take care of business against. These teams, you have to say, okay, we are better on paper. We are home. We will play well, play solid hockey, do what we have to do, and find a way to win this game. And the problem is that the one thing the Islanders can control, they did not control in this game. Where do we begin? Well, how about this? You got to be ready to play when a game starts. I know it's a really tough thing to say, right? You got to be ready to play when the game starts. Well, the New York Islanders weren't. In the first period, they were outshot 11-6. It was ugly, plain and simple, just an ugly period. Connor Bedard scored the power play goal, and you just had this sort of sinking feeling that the Islanders were playing down to the competition. And, in the first period, the Blackhawks weren't just the better team. They really controlled the pace and the tempo of the game. And it wasn't pretty, but for 20 minutes of hockey, Chicago looked like a pretty darn good hockey team. and the Islanders just couldn't get out of their own way. That changed in the second period. And I give the Islanders credit. Yeah, they only outshot the Blackhawks by a little bit, 8-5. But at the same time, they controlled the tempo of the game in the second period. They scored 2 goals, and then they end up scoring the next 3 in the first 8 minutes of the third period. So, all of a sudden it looks like, hey, everything's okay. It may not be the most artistic win, but we're up 5-1. The Blackhawks replace their goalie. They bring in a guy who had never played in an NHL game before in Drew Commesso. And the Islanders managed in the last 11 minutes and 21 seconds of the game a grand total of 2 shots on goal against Commesso. Didn't score on him. That didn't bother me. What bothered me is you gave up 3 goals to the Blackhawks in the final 9 minutes of the game. You cannot do that. You cannot take your foot off the gas. The one thing you can control is your effort. And let's face it, for half of this game, almost all of the first period and the second half of the third period, so that's 30 minutes of this game, the New York Islanders weren't playing smart, disciplined, good hockey. And it almost cost them a game that they had no business losing. And you can get away with this most of the time against a team at or near the bottom of the standings. You can. But you do this on a game in, game out basis, you're not going anywhere. This team plays like this against even an average opponent, they're going to lose 8 times out of 10. And I'll take it a step further. Everydayers, you'll remember a couple of days ago after Tuesday night's loss to the Kings, where I said, yeah, they lost, but this was a loss they could build on. Because if they play the way they played against LA, they'll win more games than they'll lose. This performance against Chicago was the opposite. This was a win that they cannot build on other than to pocket the 2 points and say, you know what? We got away with one. We got to be better. And if I'm Patrick Waugh and I am talking to this team after the game, I am not happy. I am not happy with the slow start. I am not happy that they took their foot off the gas. And, when I say took their foot off the gas, here's the thing that really frustrates me. It's not that they sort of fell back into a shell and just tried to dump the puck out of the zone and just, change their style of play necessarily. It's that they appeared indifferent. It's that this team basically looked like they said, you know what? This game is over. We have it in the bag. We're going to just sort of go through the motions and hope nobody gets hurt in the last 10 minutes of this game so we could pocket the 2 points and go home. Doesn't work that way. Even a struggling team like the Blackhawks are right now can win. They beat the Rangers. Not that the Rangers are playing particularly well, but they just beat the Rangers at Madison Square Garden earlier this week. They're made up of NHL players. They may not be elite NHL players, but you got to respect the game, respect your teammates, and respect yourself. And that means you play from the opening whistle to the closing whistle. And no, I don't expect the Islanders to dominate 60 minutes, but you got to care. You got to play like you care. You got to go out there and finish what you start and start on time. And they did neither in this game. And if it wasn't the Chicago Blackhawks, this would most likely have been a loss. So, hey, I'm happy. The Islanders have now won 3 of their last 4. They beat the Blackhawks. They got the 2 points. We talked about the need to win both of these games against the Blackhawks in order to make this a successful week and start to build on, the recent success and et cetera. But you can't get away with too many lackluster performances like they had for the first period and the second half of the third period last night against the Blackhawks. You just can't. And I am beginning to wonder. Is this a coaching thing? Is this a players thing? Is the roster just not good enough? Why is this team seemingly incapable of giving a full 60-minute effort on an even semi-consistent basis? I think it's a little bit of all of them. But if you have any illusion, if you have any hope, any realistic chance that this team can go on a run and make the playoffs this year, and there's still 50 games left, okay? 100 points available. You're not going to do it if you play like you did last night at home against Chicago. You're just not. You've got to play good to very good hockey on a consistent basis. And that's not what this team did. I'll take the win. I'll take the 2 points. I'm happy with, the middle 30 minutes of this game. But this is not a recipe for long-term success. And this team has a lot of things to clean up if they really hope to even contend for a wild card spot. And let's face it, that is most likely the best this team is capable of doing this year after all the injuries and the way the roster is built and everything else. You want to get that playoff spot? You got to be better than this, because this won't cut it. All right, more to get to on today's show. We'll have some more key takeaways. We'll have our hero and go to the game. We've got some good news. Some good news regarding the walking wounded as they take another step closer to returning. And for our Islanders' birthday of the day, a player who was with the Islanders in the mid to late 2000 teens and then was exiled to Bridgeport for salary cap reasons. Let's see if you can guess who this former first-round pick is. Not of the Islanders. Let's see if you can guess who it is. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. Here's why you need to get started today. You can win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. No need to win. The $50 is guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers fun weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where selected player projections are discounted up to 25%. This week on Prize Picks, looking at the hockey board, Jack Hughes maybe more than 4 shots on goal. Artemi Panarin, more than 1 assist. It's simple to make my picks and have fun with friends while potentially cashing out fast. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you could check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. And Islander fans, use your knowledge of the Islanders on FanDuel to make some exciting bets. Check out the odds for Sunday's rematch in Chicago against the Blackhawks. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So there were some things to like. It just, the way this game ended and the way it started just left a bad taste in my mouth. Just the way this team can't seem to finish. Got to give props, by the way, to Connor Bedard. He is fun to watch, and he's only going to get better. But, here's the good thing. First of all, let's start with this. Isaiah George bounced back. And no, he wasn't, a shutdown guy. He played only 14 and a half minutes, but he was a +1. Yeah, he took a penalty. He blocked a shot. He delivered a hit. And the good thing is that he didn't make the same blatant mistakes that he made Tuesday night. So, the big question about Isaiah George in the short run was, how was he going to respond to a poor performance where the coach sat him out for the second half of a game? And the answer is he took it in stride, he came back, he learned, and he played better. And that's all you could ask of a 20-year-old rookie who still hasn't played 25 professional games and 20 games in the NHL. So glad to see that. Also glad to see more offense from Dennis Cholowski. We don't mention Cholowski a lot, but he is going to take over the Mike Riley role, I think, for the rest of the season if he continues to play the way he played. He scored a goal with a wicked shot from just inside the blue line. He had 2 shots on goal. He's going to see some time on the second power play unit. This is just, nice to see that a guy who almost nobody really gave much of a chance to make this roster has carved out a role for himself on this team, and I hope he continues to do it. Another nice hit by Alexander Romanov. I think I say that almost every game, but he continues to do that and play well. And again, to me, the Islanders line and for all intents and purposes, that they mixed up the lines at different times. But to have Simon Holmstrom and J.G. Pageau both play as well as they did, especially offensively, that was great to see. Kudos to Bo Horvat and Brock Nelson and J.G. Pageau and Casey Cizikas. The Islanders dominated the faceoff circle. Nelson, 13 out of 17. Horvat, 7 out of 10. Pageau, 6 out of 9. Cizikas, 12 out of 15. That is dominance in the dot. And when you only win by 1 goal, don't think it didn't matter that you dominated in the dot. Hero and go to the game. The GOAT for me is the lack of 60-minute effort. It's the fact that this team just cannot play from start to finish effective hockey. And the hero of the game, I'm going with Simon Holmstrom. A goal, 2 assists, a +2. To me, Holmstrom earns that reward, and he has sort of gotten a little bit hotter offensively recently, so that is good to see. So overall, look, you never want to be too upset after a loss. After a win, you want to be happy with it. Patrick Waugh needs to get a message, though, through to this team that you got to play better. So I'll take it, but that's where we are. Now, for the good news. All 3 of the Islanders' big wounded players, injured players who we are expecting back, took another step on Thursday toward their return. Mathew Barzal Anthony Duclair and Adam Pelech all participated in the morning skate on Thursday, and it was a full practice participation. No non-contact jersey, no restrictions. For Barzal, this was his first morning skate since October 30th. Duclair, second time that he was out there. Well, okay, first time was Tuesday. And now he is starting to put together a few practices in a row. And, you know, Pelech, fourth straight session with the team with a regular jersey. Now, Patrick Waugh kind of tempering things. I'm excited for everybody, he said. It just tells you that they're getting closer and closer to get back in the lineup. It's funny sometimes when those injuries happen, you feel like they'll never come back. But now they're close to coming back, as I think it's a good feeling for everybody. Now, keep in mind, they're still all officially listed as day-to-day. And, you know, I don't think we see more than one of them on Sunday. And we may not see any of them on Sunday. But next week, usually it's about a week after you start skating, you know, and practicing with the team. I think, you know, there's a possibility one of them may come back Sunday, but it is also possible that sometime next week, all three of these guys could be back. Scott Mayfield was back in the lineup for the Islanders, and Anders Lee, who, if you follow me on X, you know I mentioned he was ill, the same illness that seems to be going through the Islanders locker room. He did not participate in the morning skate yesterday, but was a game time decision and did end up playing. Now, he played only 15 and a half minutes, a little less than normal, had an assist, but Anders Lee toughing it out for the team, and that was certainly encouraging and good to see Anders Lee out there. All right, more to get to on today's show. A rematch with the Blackhawks. We'll talk a little bit about what the Islanders need to do differently, and also both teams facing some goaltending conundrums. We'll talk about that. We'll have our Islanders birthday of the day and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with quality candidates faster. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And Locked On Islanders listeners will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from hosts Steele and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Islanders return to action Sunday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Chicago against the Blackhawks. And both teams have goaltending questions that need to be answered. Semyon Varlamov still not back. Marcus Hogberg was again the backup goalie for the New York Islanders against Chicago. It is time, in my mind, to let Hogberg play against the Blackhawks Sunday if Varley isn't ready. And look, the one thing you do not want to do, this Islanders team is dependent on great goaltending to stay competitive in the playoff race or in any given game. You don't want to wear out Ilya Sorokin. You do not want him, when you get to March and April or even February, to be not playing well because he's gotten too many games in a row. We saw last year when Varley got hurt how it took a toll on Sorokin when he played, 12, 13, 14 games in a row. If Marcus Hogberg, if you don't believe he's capable of giving you one start against a struggling team like the Blackhawks, maybe he's not the guy who should be your third goalie, because you don't want to wear down Ilya Sorokin. And, I would even take a loss against Chicago, knowing that you're going to have your goalie ready. Now, if Varlamov is ready and he can play, okay, you've waited maybe as long as you can before, putting Varley back in the lineup. I get it. But do not repeat the mistakes that were made a year ago where there was just no confidence in Ken Appleby, and it was Sorokin for 12, 13, 14 games. The Blackhawks, as we mentioned, Peter Mrazek, their starting goalie, is out. Arvid Soderblom didn't look great against the Islanders. They pulled him. Drew Commesso came in, made his NHL debut. So if you're the Blackhawks, do you go with Soderblom or Commesso on Sunday? And there's a catch to all this, okay? There's a catch. This is a back-to-back for Chicago. The Islanders are off until Sunday. The Blackhawks play the Devils in Newark on Saturday afternoon at 1 Eastern time. So you got to figure Soderblom starts one of those two games, and Commesso probably starts the other. So let's see which one the Islanders get. It'll be interesting. And as far as the Islanders are concerned, they need to tighten things up. They need to give a more honest 60-minute effort. And defensively, they need to be more consistent if they want to win a game with a little more style points, let's say, than they did last night at home against Chicago. The Blackhawks have nothing to lose. They are a team that is, not going to make the playoffs this year. If the Islanders have any hopes of making the playoffs, you got to win and you got to play better than they did last night. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And Thursday was the 39th birthday of former Islanders winger Andrew Ladd, the Maple Ridge, BC native, a first-round pick of the Hurricanes, fourth overall in the 2004 NHL draft. Made his NHL debut in 05-06 with Carolina and won a cup with the Canes that year. Won another cup with Chicago in 2010. Played for the Atlanta Thrashers, then the Winnipeg Jets, then the Blackhawks again, and then the Islanders. Had a great first year with the Islanders, 23 goals, 31 points, so a Cy Young Award type season in 2016, 2017. Then injuries slowed him down, and a bad contract ended up with him being banished to Bridgeport. Finished his NHL career with the Arizona Coyotes in 2021-2022. Played in 1,001 NHL games, 256 goals, 550 points, 615 penalty minutes, add 9 goals, 18 points in 65 playoff games. I did mention that he won a pair of Stanley Cups. His banishment down to the minors was more cap related than anything else. And don't get me started on the way the Islanders have handled the cap recently. One of Andrew Ladd's better games as an Islander. How about January 26, 2017? The Islanders hosting the Canadiens at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Carey Price and Thomas Greiss are the goalies in this one. Andrew Ladd, our Islanders' birthday of the day, gets the scoring started in the first period, assisted by Calvin DeHaan and Nick Leddy. That made it 1-0 Islanders. Only goal of the second period belonged to the Habs and Shea Weber. But in the third, the Islanders take the lead for good on another goal by Andrew Ladd. John Tavares and Nick Leddy, the assist. Josh Bailey scores later on the power play. Islanders win it 3-1. Andrew Ladd, our Islanders' birthday of the day, 2 goals on 3 shots. He was a +2. He had the game winner, and he was on the ice for 13 minutes and 30 seconds. So Andrew Ladd, a guy who had a great start to his Islanders career and then was victimized by the salary cap, he is our Islanders' birthday of the day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us an email at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long, and I am live tweeting during nearly every Islanders home and road game. So join me for some instant insight and analysis, and it's great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. We will be back on Monday. We'll have our key takeaways from Sunday's game and hopefully some more injury updates as the return of Anthony Duclair, Adam Pelech, and Mathew Barzal gets closer. We'll fill you in on any roster moves that are made as well. Have a great weekend, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.